Hey, it's Amy, and welcome to What the Truck Ghost Stories. You will hear real stories from real truck drivers and their families. Please like, share, and comment after. Also subscribe and hit that bell if you're new. Enjoy. This isn't a ghost story, but still scary as ever. I was driving through Arkansas one evening, and a cardboard box rolled down a hill a little ways ahead of me. I mean, a cardboard box isn't gonna hurt my truck, so I planned to just run it over. The road wasn't very wide at all, but at the last minute, something made swerve and miss it. When I looked back from my side mirror, I saw two small kids climbing out of the box. I started shaking and realized I almost ran over that box. I know small towns kids find strange things to do to pass the time, but playing by a highway is scary. My brother was a truck driver in the 90s to early 2000s. He just told me this story a few months ago. He was driving through Pennsylvania on way back to New Jersey. He pulled over the side of the road behind two other trailers. In the early morning, he heard someone bang on his right door. He quickly jumps from the sleeping compartment and grabs his bat. As he looks out the window, there's no one there, but now there's a bang on the left side. Freaked out, he looks out that window, and there's nothing but silence now. He's trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Seconds later, banging on both doors simultaneously. He said the banging was so loud and heavy, the truck was shaking. Both curtains open. He can see there's no one out there. He quickly jumps in the driver's seat and starts the truck. He sees the other two trucks ahead of him do the same. He said he felt as if they all had experienced the same thing. In Missouri, I stopped at an off-ramp to stretch my legs and take a breather. As I'm smoking a cigarette, a little girl from some direction I couldn't figure out giggles and says, "Hi, mister." My initial reaction was, what the hell is a little kid doing out here at this time? So I talk back and say hi. She then responds with, "My mommy says you'll be okay, don't worry." Now utterly confused, I ask her what she means. No response. Then suddenly I feel like somebody is standing next to me, but it doesn't feel negative or bad. Just feels like somebody is right there next to me. It felt so cold. I turned for a split second and looked back, and the little girl was gone. I jumped in my truck and left. Later on down the road, I was in deep thought about what happened that I realized that I forgot to fuel up at my last stop when the warning light came on. So I scramble to look at my GPS and find the nearest truck stop. I find one and set the course. As I roll up to the truck stop, my truck starts sputtering, and I barely make it to the fuel line before the truck starts dying. I ran out of fuel right as I got on the fuel line. As I was driving back through, I looked over at the spot I had stopped at, and there were two crosses on the side of the road. I think it hit me then what had happened. New Mexico, Nevada, and Utah are some states that to this day I still see stuff in the skies that I can't explain. Lights rapidly changing direction and taking off at blinding speeds, but no sound barrier being broken. I've seen lights hovering over the desert several miles off the interstate. Then it suddenly takes off and the lights cut out. Various shapes and sizes, from what I can make out again, I'm a night driver. I know military aircraft pretty well, and some of them more than likely were, but some of them absolutely cannot be any military aircraft currently in mainstream use. Conventional aircraft do not move like that. The most vivid one would be at an off-ramp in New Mexico. I stopped to take a pee and decided to turn it into a 15-minute break since my butt was sore anyway. As I'm stargazing and admiring how clear the sky is, I saw what looked like a formation of lights in the shape of a triangle lift off from the desert floor and then take off into the sky. I kept me eyes on it, and it just kept gaining altitude until the lights just disappeared. I look down at my watch and notice it's not ticking, so I pull out my phone, and it's off. I turn my phone on, and according to the time on my phone, it had been 5 minutes since my watch stopped. I felt like whatever it was that just took off had something to do with it. My grandpa was a trucker who shared his creepiest experience while out on the road. It was getting very late and very dark, so he pulled into a rest area off the highway in the middle of nowhere. The place was totally empty, meaning there weren't any other vehicles or people there. While he was getting some shut-eye inside his truck, he heard a faint sound of a barking dog that seemed to get louder and louder as time went by. Eventually, the nasty barking sound was coming from right outside his driver's side door. As he got up to look in the window, he didn't see a rabid dog, but instead it was some person looking directly at him, growling and trying to get in. He started the engine and got the heck out of there. I was driving for Costco a few years back. It was around this time of year. We usually took extra toy shipments to various locations due to the holiday season. We got a call that one of our locations in rural Kentucky needed to restock their giant Spider-Man dolls. They knew I was a fast driver, so I was giving the last-minute late-night duty. I loaded my truck and headed out on the 265. It was around 3 a.m. when I started to have this eerie feeling. I chalked it up to just being tired. About 15 minutes later, the road started to fog up. I mean more so than any other time before or since. It got to the point where I had to pull off to the side and wait. There wasn't any other cars on the road, and I was ahead of time, so I figured I could wait until it cleared up a bit. About 5 minutes of sitting still in silence. My truck goes dead. No lights, no engine, nothing. I try my CB, but cannot get anyone on. I check my cell phone, and there is no signal. As I'm sitting there contemplating my next move, I hear what sounds like a child crying. It slowly morphed into a woman crying, or at least that's what it sounded like to me. Now I'm a big man, 6'3" and 250 pounds, but I refused to exit my cab. I did roll down my window and asked if anybody needed help. At that point, the crying stopped. Then I heard what sounded like a sinister laugh. At that point, I felt like the laughter was directed at me. I rolled up my window, and it seemed like the more scared I became, the louder the laugh went. Then, as soon as it started, it stopped. And just like that, my truck started back up, and the fog dissipated. I drove out of there like a bat out of hell. I get to the next truck stop and pull in. I run to the bathroom and pour water on my face and ask myself, did that really just happen? I go out to the diner and see this fella in a John Deere hat, red flannel, and blue jeans. I needed to know if anyone else experienced that too. I go up to him and say, "Excuse me, are you a fellow trucker? 'Cause I just had one hell of an experience." I was delivering and installing machines. Since I was behind schedule, I decided to drive late to my next destination. There were no street lights and no other cars. At the peak of feeling like I was in the middle of nowhere, every single light on the dashboard of the truck lit up, and then it stalled. Now it's pitch black. I am stopped, and the truck isn't restarting. I shut everything down and started making phone calls. I looked up and saw something move in front of the truck, just out of the distance of my hazard lights. I finally got a hold of someone, and they told me it would be 2-3 hours before they could get a mechanic for me. So now I am sitting in silence. The only noise is the clicking the hazard lights are making, and I am staring out the windshield into a void of darkness when I see movement again. I threw on my high beams. The headlights caught 3 wolves snacking on something that looked like roadkill. I honked the horn, and they looked at me like they were irritated more than scared. The wolves, more than likely, weren't going to bother me, but it was spooky just knowing they were there. So I shut the lights off. I suddenly heard what I can only equate to a woman's scream of terror that sounded like it came from right behind the truck. Then something slammed into the side of the truck, hard enough to rock it. I turned every light on and laid on the horn. I was checking both mirrors, and the only thing I saw was a shadow bolt across the road. I also noticed the wolves were gone. From every nature documentary I've watched, the only time predators leave food is when there are bigger predators around. I could hear it thrashing around in the brush nearby, breaking sticks and what sounded to be logs. I basically had the steering wheel gripped, all the lights on, and was feverishly looking out the windows and through the mirrors to make sure nothing was around the immediate area of the truck. Finally, I saw some headlights through one of my mirrors. The noise stopped as the headlights approached. It was obviously the mechanic. He pulled out in front of me. My headlights were shining on his truck. As his door opened to step out, we both heard the scream again, and the brush thrashing intensified. His door immediately closed, and my phone rang. He called my phone asking me what it was. He sounded more panicked than me. I had no clue what it was, and he had no clue what it was. So the mechanic called the police. 2 state police officers showed up. They lit that area up like it was a stadium. I finally stepped out of the truck for the first time since it all started. We heard that scream 3 more times while the mechanic was working on my truck. Thankfully, they were getting further away. The cops had no clue what it was either. They were kind of spooked, too. The mechanic finally got my truck running, and I made it to my hotel for the night. On the side of the truck that was hit, there was an indentation about the size of a basketball, about 7 feet off the ground. I have no idea what it was. I probably never will. I do confidently know that I will never, ever drive through the Upper Peninsula at night again. A trucker I know claims he was driving a logging truck down a remote dirt road in the middle of a forest at around midnight when a dogman creature walked out in the middle of the road. It stared at him for a few seconds, plainly visible and well illuminated by all the auxiliary lights on the truck. Then it just took off and disappeared into the woods on the other side of the road. He could hear what sounded like growls and howls off in the distance. He looped his doors and hauled butt out of there. He said he don't know why he locked the doors, because that thing could have ripped them off the truck. He's not a superstitious man, and he rejects everything supernatural as fiction. but he 100% believes that what he saw that night was real. I've only heard him talk about this twice. He was very drunk both times he opened up about it. Just talking about it rattled him. He was clearly uncomfortable thinking back about that night. My wife's grandfather hauled fruit and potatoes across the Northwest and Central Plains. From what he would talk about, I swear he was a serial killer. He had found or been questioned about a half-dozen deaths at rest stops. Most, if not all, were determined self-inflicted. I'm not convinced, though. Guy was a real character. My dad was a trucker for many years. One time he told me he'd stopped at a mandatory way station somewhere at night that was refurbished from an old train station. My dad parked the truck and got out, noticing that someone was walking along the train tracks with a light. It was really late, so my dad called out and asked if he was okay. The man kept walking. My dad said he had a lantern in his hand. My dad called out again, and the man never turned around. He went into the office and told them that some drunk guy is walking the train tracks, and the guy behind the desk nonchalantly says, "Yeah, was it this guy?" and points to an old picture on the wall. It was a picture of all the rail yard guys from over 70 years before. Sure enough, my dad had seen one of the guys in the photo. Apparently, a lot of people have seen whatever that was and come in asking questions. My dad is a retired trucker, and he's told me this story many times. He'd parked up in a very rural area for the night, surrounded by nothing but fields around and the occasional passing truck. He put his head down and had a little nap, woke up sometime later, needing to go to the bathroom. He switched his headlights on and prepared to hop out and do his business when he saw a lady standing just a little way in front. He watched her, wondering where she'd come from, when another truck drove past. He looked again, and she's gone. He got so spooked, he drove to a more populated area and spent the night parked there instead. Driving home from a late shift, I come to a part of the road that is a huge hill, low point, then huge hill again, with nothing but forest all around. As I crest the hill, I see an orange van on its side at the very bottom of the hill, and a woman standing in a wedding dress next to it. I slow down and see that she is covered in blood. Holy shit. This is way before cell phones, so I slowly pass, taking in her calm expression, her blood-stained wedding dress, the undercarriage of that orange van, and pull over to the right slightly past the wreckage. Get out of my car, look back, and nothing. There was nothing there but empty, dark road. I freak out, speed home hoping a cop would pull me over. I still don't know what I saw. Over-the-road truck driver was heading back home after 2 weeks spending on the highways and completing his route. In order to get back home faster, the truck driver decided to take a shortcut through an isolated road area. Although he had previously heard about the stories happening in the area, he decided to go the road at 3:40 a.m. in the morning. He was driving the road for about an hour, expecting for something paranormal to happen, but the road was still untroubled. The driver calmly continues to drive on the road until he gets to an area with old trees on one side of the road. As many long-haul truck drivers who keep truck accessories, he was keeping his radio on. As he gets closer to the trees area, a static starts crackling through the speakers. Hearing this, the driver already starts to feel chilly when suddenly he sees a man hanging from a tree on one side of the road. Then the driver stepped on the truck brakes, and when he looked through the rearview mirror, he saw the man still hanging there. Continually, he got out of the truck to see what is happening, but the man wasn't there. Then he got back in the truck and turned the wheels on. When he looked back at the rearview mirror again, he was there again hanging. He thought it would be better to increase the speed and not look back. After experiencing this, the anonymous driver thinks shortcuts and abandoned roads aren't that good of an idea. Thanks for listening. We have plenty more to come. If you have a story you would like me to share, email me. We love you guys. You mean the world to us. We hope you know that. Until next time.